Good morning, everyone. Dumelang bombele bontate kgotsong. My name is Pelana Pumane, and I am coming to you from the crispy mountain kingdom of Lesotho. On this day, Africa Day, the 25th of May, history is being made today. Lesotho is joining and standing up and being counted in Africa as we present Africa's top 100 brands. The 11th edition that was started over 11 years ago by the Brand Africa Network. It is an honor, it is a pleasure for Lesotho to join Africa, and we're looking forward to gaining some insights, having some fruitful and robust discussions that can take our continent and our African countries forward. We've got a wonderful program lined up today. We've got an expert panel of premier professionals. I'm really excited. As I said, my name is Pelana Pumane, and I'm the executive chairman of Tangerine Co., Lesotho's experience and communications company. In collaboration with Brand Africa, we're bringing the first Lesotho edition of Brand Africa's top 100 brands. We have a very great program, and joining us is Tebe Galafeng, the founder of the Brand Africa Network, Karen Duchesne from Cantor. Welcome, Tebe. Welcome, Karen. It's a pleasure to have you on board. I know you just got off Uganda. Immediately after Lesotho, we're going to be handing over to Botswana. So this pretty much means Lesotho is the first Southern African country to get a taste of the pie and a taste of the results. So we're very excited. I know we're pressed for time in this COVID-led, pandemic-led, socially distanced environment. We're coming to you from Citrus House in Lesotho. We've got a very small audience in the room. Moving forward, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to ask Karen to go into the methodology of how we collected the results. After Karen, then I'll ask Tebe to announce the results, but perhaps just to give a bit of a highlight, just food for thought. This is the second edition of the Brand Africa, the announcement of Africa's top 100 brands that's under a pandemic. Last year, first edition was held under a pandemic. It was socially distanced. It was virtual. We're seeing as the vaccine is getting rolled out, the economies are opening up. Things are starting to get back to normal. A new normal, but normal nonetheless. And given all these dynamics around the pandemic and COVID, you can imagine how some of this has affected the economy of the world, the economy of Africa, and the economy of our respective countries. Later on, when we jump to our panel discussion, we're going to be discussing how the pandemic has affected African brands, how the pandemic has affected Lesotho brands, and what can be done to move forward. The pandemic has been called the Great Reset. Do we reset backwards or do we reset forwards? So without further ado, Karen, I'm going to quickly switch over to you, and you can give us a highlight of how the list is built, lest people think that we're trying to present something that's not true.
Thank you so much, Pelani. Wonderful to be here today, and happy Africa Day to everybody. And also happy birthday to my colleague Ivan Maroke, who celebrates his birthday every year on Africa Day. What a great day to celebrate. So this morning we are here to share the findings of the Brand Africa 100, and I will give you a quick overview of how we actually undertook the research. So as I mentioned, I'm Karen Deshen from Kantar, and it's our mission to understand people and what they want, what brands they love and how they feel about things. So we undertook the research in partnership with Geopol, one of the leading mobile insights agencies for collection of data in our continent. And it is an exciting day because this is the 11th time we are here to share the 100 most admired brands in Africa. These will be published over the weekend in African Business, so don't miss out on that publication. And this year, wow, we have got incredible coverage. We have got 28 countries in which we've collected the opinions of citizens of those countries to understand which brands are resonating with them, which are the ones that they admire, and who has made the top 100. We cover West Africa, we cover East Africa, Southern Africa, and as mentioned, this is the first time we've included Lesotho, so welcome Lesotho to the program. We've got North Africa and we have Central Africa. So let's move along and find out how we do it. So as mentioned, it is a partnership. We get the majority of the data collection from mobile operator Geopol, who are connected into all the operators across Africa and are able to do mobile surveys for us and understand people and what they want. And then we collate those results into the 100 index. I would like to say a big thank you to Caitlin van Niekerk from Geopol and her colleagues, Joe and the team in Kenya, who have been leading the coordination of this very, very extensive data collection program. So Geopol, as I've mentioned, is a leading mobile research platform. They've got over 5 million profile respondents from across the continent and a few other key countries in the world. And they have access to almost 250 million people that can do research. So we did the survey using two key methods, the SMS method for those that are not using a smartphone and mobile web for those that are on smartphone. So really excellent coverage of all the people of Africa. And why did we choose mobile? Well, forget the fact that it's COVID and we can't actually interact with people where they feel comfortable and open and able to share. Mobile is such a wonderful way to access people's opinions in Africa. We have coverage of over 747 million people in Africa that have got a mobile phone. 50% of people have access to the internet via that mobile phone, and 33% are using a smartphone. So really incredible coverage. And we know that by 2025, at least 87% of people will be able to access the internet by the phone. So we continue to build our database using mobile for collection in Brand Africa. Next. So as I've mentioned, great coverage, and we used, you can follow and find out more about Geopol at Geopol Surveys. So there's 4 key areas that we cover in the survey. The first and most important is the most admired brand in Africa. And this can come from any category whatsoever. It is a totally spontaneous question, which people can say, you know, I love a cold drink, I love a shoe brand, I love a bank. Anything can come up. And those 3, everyone is invited to give at least 3 answers there. And we put those all into a correlated index. We code it up and you bring you the findings there. We then move on to what is your most admired African brand? That is a brand that is made in Africa. And what we'll see when Tebe reveals the findings is that for many people, the brands that they believe are made in Africa are actually global brands. And that's because these guys really know how to connect with the hearts and minds of African citizens. We then move to financial services, which is such an important driver of success in our country's enablement of the movement of money so that people can buy the brands and products and services that they want. And lastly, we finished up with media, the people who tell us, showcase the brands, allow us to advertise and to really connect and reveal the benefits of our brands across Africa. So we finished with that. And then this year, we added an extra question because it is certainly the most unique of times that I think any of us has ever lived to. Who would have thought that many of us would be attending this presentation today wearing a mask? Not many, I don't think. And we added a question, which is, which brand do you feel has been most effective in helping during these COVID times? We'll see who comes through there. And we can see that many governments have made an incredible impact in that regard. So it's 3 brands, per respondent for each of those questions. That leads us to over 80,000 answers. What a pile of data for us to code up and make into this meaningful index that you get from us today. So that's over 3,500 individual brand mentions that are covered. Next. And next. So once we've got all that data, what we do is we do the coding and classification into the right categories, etc. We then weight that to represent the countries in terms of sample size and population size so that we get a weighted average index of the findings, which helps us to get to the top 100 brands in Africa. It's fully representative. Our next slide. I don't know if there's just a slight delay due to internet. So let me just give you one more criteria that you need to cover in order to qualify to be on the top 100 index. Your brand needs to be recalled in at least one other country than the country in which the brand originates. So to be in the 100, which is a pan-African index, we do expect you to be in at least 2 countries. And what we will show, though, is in the local country indexes, your locally produced brands will come up, and we can see those there. So, as I've already said, COVID has had such an impact on brands and life in general in Africa. So let's look at some of the categories that have been really, really affected in this regard. First of all, I think there's been many brands that have been accelerated. If you were producing cleaning products of any kind, especially those that have got germ protection or sanitization properties, you would have seen your brands fly out the door. Across the globe, we have seen these kind of products being increasing in popularity and in prominence and brand importance. On the other hand, sport brands did actually come under a bit of pressure because many of our global sports, which are the ones that excite us and bring us together in Africa, were put on hold due to the pandemic, and we had to watch reruns. But these reruns, let me tell you, were still there, making people feel that emotional connection, and the brands that sponsor sport definitely benefit in this regard. Brands that rely on selling products in bars and restaurants were unfortunately negatively affected, and they really had to fight hard to retain their share of mind and to be prevalent in people's lives. We did see in our consumption data that we do see these brands have benefited from in-home consumption increases. But yeah, I think for many people, these are the brands that connect us when we're out and about. And then lastly, what we've seen is from a fashion perspective, is that not going out, not traveling, spending more time at home, working from home. We've seen a huge increase in the need for relaxed and casual clothing. So we'll see which brands are resonating in that regard. What I can say before I hand over to Tebe just now is that the strong brands, no matter what has been thrown at them, the craziness of COVID, they have survived, and the index is incredibly stable over the past 10 or 11 years. Next one. I think we've got some just keeping the suspense going. So one of the first things we see in almost every country is that African fabric is part of the fabric of life. These beautiful colors and designs that are made using the wax printing come through in all countries under the names that it's known as in their country, be it Katenga, just be it wax or whatever people call it. These come through all the way through. These we do not put onto the index, but we see that they do come through. They are perceived to be brands in Africa. People long for products that are very durable, that last well, and have a great design. Next. This is all about suspense, people. What will come next? Let us wait. Yes, as we've also seen, is online purchases have thrived during lockdown. Anyone who's selling their products live, we've seen Instagram sales going up. We've seen online food delivery, grocery delivery just going through the roof as people get comfortable with buying stuff online because they don't want to leave the house. So those brands have benefited much in this regard. Next. It's me. So part also of the infrastructure of our continent has been the movement of money. And it's really wonderful to see how the mobile operators are being recognized for their contribution in terms of the financial system of Africa. And soccer, as I've already said, plays a huge role. I'm terribly sorry. In terms of building brand awareness. And those that are sponsoring soccer are certainly recognized right at the top of the index. Next up. Yes, and although I've said many of our alcohol brands have had a tough year in 2020, what we see is that emotional connection and the fact that they support our athletes still shows them as being strong brands in the countries in which they come from. And brands like Guinness is actually believed to be an African brand. It is so strong in the hearts and minds of people that people don't even know that this product comes from Ireland. They believe it to be truly African. And you'll see how strong it is when we get to the index. What we see in the automotive sector is that there are a lot more local brands being produced. Brands like Innocent, which is giving ruggedness, strength, etc., from an automotive perspective. And when we look at handsets, this is the life and soul of the average person in Africa. We live with our phones. This is what enables us to access information, to get jobs, to connect with one another. And brands like Techno have really understood what it takes to get the distribution you need and to grow. They are able to bring great price points to the people of Africa to enable them to get the power of a mobile phone. As I mentioned, the cars, Katanka, another one that's coming through. And what's wonderful to see once again is the power of our local conglomerates. Those are what we would call outbound multinationals. They've started local, they've got into the hearts and minds, and now they're expanding across the continent. Great brands like Dangote, like Azam, who are really not just being strong in their own countries, but are moving outward across the continent. And of course, the brands that have been here supporting Africa for many, many years, like Coca-Cola, who's been in the continent for over 90 years distributing their products and their services. They are much loved in the hearts and minds of African consumers. Lastly, we cannot, but we'd be amiss if we didn't mention how important our mobile operators are. They enable us to be connected, and brands like MTN are mentioned in at least 15 countries in Africa. They're just more than telco. They're part of life. They enable us to do the things that we do. We could not imagine our lives without our mobile operators. I've mentioned this already, but it's amazing how many international brands are actually perceived to be African. When we ask people which brands that are made in Africa do you admire, very often they mention the international brands. They just believe them to be part of African life. And that's because they know how to understand consumer needs and wants. They do the insights, they get the research done, and they think globally, but act in a global, they think locally, but they act in a global way in terms of how they distribute, how they deliver their products, route to market in a very professional way. And they know how to connect their brands with the superstars of Africa, be it our great runners, be it our influencers and fashion designers. And you can see like brands like Nike that have just embraced African design and brought it together into one unique African offer that really people love. So at this point, I cannot wait to hand over to the African brand guru. I hope you're following him on Instagram, because it is an adventure just seeing where he is. He's missing his constant travel, but he is managing to still get around the continent. I'm going to hand over to Tebe Akalafeng, the founder and chairman of Brand Africa, to share the findings of this year's rankings. Over to you, Tebe.
Thank you, Karen. What a fascinating from you, listening to all the great insights from the research. So how does this all come together? So we're going to do the presentation in two ways. I'm going to focus first on the Pan-African results, give a highlight of where the continent is, and then go right into Lesotho. So follow me and tell me, please, if it's going through right now, because I'm having a bit of a slight delay with internet. So what's the big number that we found out? The big number is we have held steady. Last year, 13% of the brands that Africans admire were African. This year, we know something about COVID. COVID has brought everything to a standstill. Similarly, we are at 13% again this year of the most admired brands in the continent. So we're holding steady. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that's where we are. It's better than going backwards, which is where we were for many years. So what are the top 10 most admired brands in the continent? Nike, Adidas, Samsung, Coke, Apple, Tecno, Puma, amazing Gucci. Gucci has been on the list for 10 years and in the 10. Toyota and Zara. That's brand missing. It used to be there for the last 10 years. MTN has dropped to number 11 for the first time in 10 years. The global brands have really dug in. We are there still in for a fight, but we can do a little bit better. We then obviously ask the question about what's your most admired African brand. When we ask the question, the number one brand, Dangote. When we don't ask the question, when we just say, what is your most admired brand? MTN is the highest ranked African brand. So if it's unprompted, MTN is number one. When you prompt it, Dangote is number one. The two of them, every year, they pretty much, they own the two spaces. The top 5 brands in top 4 brands here have been on this list for a bit of time since we started this ranking. We started the Africa list ranking about 4 or 5 years ago because we really decided we actually need to focus on the African brands themselves. The top 100, the top 10 most admired media brands. Who's telling our story? DSTV. Now, DSTV is interesting, isn't it? BBC has been number one for the last 10 years. Number one. And this year, DSTV has gone up. Why? Streaming, COVID. We can't go anywhere else but sit at home and do COVID. So what has that done for us? It has enabled brands like DSTV, which bring all those other brands to our homes, to rise to the top of awareness and to be recognized finally as the most admired brand. Remember, DSTV is a brand of brands and itself does not broadcast, but it enables other broadcasters. And BBC, of course, DSTV, and BBC, of course, a stalwart of African brands in Africa, with their world service, has been around. Media, financial services, GT Bank. GT Bank was there last year. GT Bank is here this year. GT Bank is interesting because what GT Bank has done, they've said, we need to be future focused. We need to be technology led. We need to build our brand so that when the customer arrives in the future, they find us waiting for them in a digitally led environment. Very strong Nigerian brands, very strong South African brands leading the pack. Then the top most admired brands by region: Central Africa, Samsung. North Africa, Nike. Southern Africa, Adidas. West Africa, Samsung. East Africa, Nike. When you look at my category, consumables, the Nestle's of the world, electronics, you've seen them already. Automotive. Automotive is interesting because automotive takes so much investment. So for us to be able to begin to see the Innocence and the Katanka from Ghana, Innocent from Nigeria, quite interesting. As what Innocent and those brands are trying to do, they're trying to stop the influx of second-hand goods into the countries, into the continent, by saying we can, instead of getting used brands. The key categories across the continent: sports led by Nike, by Guinness, Ethiopian. Ethiopian has catapulted from nowhere to number 51 on the top 100. Why? Because during COVID, it's the the continent that actually survived and thrived. They were moving PPEs, they were moving vaccines, they were moving around the world and the continent. A strong brand. They're creating the hub of brands, the hub of for Ethiopia is no question the hub of African aviation. All roads go through, all airlines go through Ethiopia these days. So you can see the category of brands who leads the category. The new brand as a new business, the new issue that's coming out at the end of this weekend, African business. You can see Africa's best friends. Lift of African brands defy the pandemic, and the reason they defy the pandemic, and I'm remiss, I should have mentioned it, is when you look at what happened during COVID, is a lot of brands that started to look internally, look local. It says let's invest local, let us build for ourselves, because you can't do anything else. That's where you get to see a brand like Batu, which came from nowhere 5 years ago, is in the top 25, actually is the top 10 of African brands. How did Batu do it? Batu means a shoe in township language in South Africa. How did Batu do it? Partnered with Castle Light, created a limited shoe across different African countries, about 6-7 African countries. They partnered with people like Somezi, who's got 4 million followers, known across the continent. So the brand reputation is leading the brand across the continent. But of course, it's also available through e-commerce and all those. So quite interesting where we are headed. There is your top 100 brands in the continent. Lesotho. Let's start with the rankings. Lesotho. Number 2 from the United States. I don't know if brand so it was the most admired in Vodacom in Lesotho. I don't know if it's a surprise, but I've been to Lesotho, as I've been to every other country, in the continent at least, and I've seen the dominance of that brand. Number 1 brand in Lesotho by far. The top 10 in Lesotho, Vodacom, Nike, Shoprite, as I've said earlier, Samsung, Econet, Adidas, Alliance Insurance, Pep, New K. Also, I can't do when it's cold. Number 10, Toyota from Japan. So the most African brands. What is the most admired African brand in Lesotho? Number 3, Aranda. Aranda is from Randfontein. They make those blankets, Siana Marina, and all those that were copied by Louis Vuitton and everybody, which, of course, the pattern will be debated for years where it comes from. Number 2, MTN. Most admired African brand. Number 1, ShopRite. ShopRite is probably the most dominant supermarket across the continent. You pretty much find it in all the key capitals of the continent. If you look at the list, ShopRite, MTN, Aranda, picking up the top 3 lists, and you can see the range of all the brands across the continent. So the most admired local brands, Lesotho Times. Public, I love public. I always see it. I mean, Lesotho, they always have interesting most
Well, it seems that we're having internet connection challenges. Karen, I don't know if we could quickly jump over to you and see if maybe you can finish off the list. We're biting on nails here on this side of the border. The suspense is killing us. And I can imagine the rest of Southern Africa is wondering, oh my goodness, what's coming out of Lesotho? But I guess this shows you how important our list is if these are the kind of challenges we face. Karen?
Here I am.
Great.
Good to be back. And yes, Tebe is currently in Cote d'Ivoire, and unfortunately his internet is not being kind to us. We've seen great leaps and bounds in internet speed in Africa, but still it does remain a challenge in many of our countries. So I can see that the suspense is absolutely killing you. Who is the #1 admired local media brand? Yes, it is the Community Empowerment and Gender Equality brand that has come through as the most admired local brand. So well done to you. If we can move to the next one. And here's the full list of the others that are coming through. And you can see it's a wide selection of different media that are coming through. I hope you can read all of those logos. So well done to each one of you for the incredible role you play in terms of connecting with people and connecting brands and the population of Lesotho up via your stories and your content. So well done to each of you. So now let's move on to financial services. And as I've mentioned, it is such an important part of life in Africa, because if we can't move our money, keep it safe, and enable us to spend it, what else can we do? Brands cannot survive without it. So in #3 position, we've got the Post Bank. Then we've got FNB in #2. And who will be #1? Let us have a look. Yes, it is Standard Bank Lesotho. And what we've seen with Standard Bank is they have been expanding across the continent and are really resonating in many, many countries. So well done to you, Standard Bank. I know you've been in Lesotho for many, many years, and the population are very appreciative of what you get up to there in terms of bringing in the right kind of product and service that they look for. So well done. And here's the full list. Okay. So out of that long list, we've taken out just the local brands so that you can see how that goes. We've got Post Bank in #1, then we've got Alliance, we've got Belieber, Naledi, and I actually can't read the logo at the bottom. I'm terribly sorry. But those of you that are in Lesotho will know what it is. So finally, let's look at the brands that people believe have made a difference during COVID. They've been there and been helpful during this time. We see Alliance coming through. We've seen Econet, which is coming from Zimbabwe, coming through there. And in first position is Vodacom. And we've already seen just how important Vodacom has been in terms of enabling people of Lesotho to connect with one another. And this brand is touching the hearts and minds, which is its purpose as a brand. So well done to you, Vodacom, for your impact in Southern Africa and in particular in Lesotho. So here's the top 5 admired brands. These are the local brands. We've already seen ShopRite earlier. So well done to you all. So as we finish, and I'll summarize, what we've seen is that there is still a lot of work to be done in terms of branding in Africa so that we can see our African brands at a higher percentage. But we still have retained our percentage of 13% of the top 100 being local Pan-African brands. What we see is in the actual countries, we've got what we call economies. 63% of Africans do like local. It is what people want. And we do encourage you to let people know about your brand so that they can have a better impact on this index. That's the goal of Tebe, is to build brands in Africa. And can you be a catalyst to make the change that we look for? To encourage that, we have launched an initiative with BCW, Kantar, and Brand Leadership Group, which is called Buy Africa, Build Africa. And this is really about harnessing all the voices, in particular the voice of the youth and others across the continent, to really speak out about the brands that are made in Africa so that we can see more impact for them in the years to come. If we move to the next slide. And the brand Africa Built Africa is really about creating unity across the continent, showcasing the logo, showcases the optimism we see in Africa. And it's really about connecting the people. Those little things around the sun are actually the people of Africa, and this is built into the logo. So that's the sentiment behind this initiative by Africa Build Africa. And any of you that do have a brand that is locally originated, so it's got to come from Africa, you're welcome to sign up on the website. You can download the logo, you can use it in your communications, you can use it on your packs. There's lots of different applications that are showcased on the website that you can get inspiration from. And if you move on. So how do you qualify? You have to be created in Africa. You have to be trading in Africa. You have to be tax compliant. We want to support doing business in the responsible way. You have to employ at least more than one person, not just the founder, and you need to serve African consumers. So it cannot be just a purely export brand. And here's the application process. Feel free to go to the website, brandafrica.net, and you'll see there's a special section called Buy Africa. You register. There's a very short questionnaire that just makes sure you meet the 5 criteria. Then you can download the certificate. You can use the brand, and you can help to build branding in Africa and in support of Brand Africa 100. And now at this stage, we've got an amazing panel lineup coming for you to talk through the implications of these findings and to discuss how we're going to continue to build brands in Africa. So I'm going to hand back to you, Palani. Thank you for hosting us this morning.
Karen, thank you very much. The atmosphere is palpable here at Citrus House, and the results, quite a number of surprises. We see the usual suspects are there, so it's a wonderful mix. I'm very excited, I think, with what's come out. For Lesotho, it provides a wonderful base to build and get into Africa and expand into other markets. So thank you very much for those insights and for those results. So now we're just going to switch over to our expert panel. Very, very exciting. And before I introduce them, we're in a very interesting time of our lives. As I said earlier on, COVID has been called the Great Reset. And we pretty much have to answer the question, do we reset forward or do we reset backwards? 3 years ago, Africa took an unprecedented step. We put into operation the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is meant to boost intra-African trade. What that means is through the agreement, it should be easy for Lesotho wool and mohair farmers to export their wool to, say, Ghana, where their wool and mohair can be turned into beautiful rugs. Or Benin and Mali can bring their cotton into Lesotho, into the textile industry, where we can make the shikis for East Africa. Through the agreement, 1.3 billion people will be affected, and a potential GDP of $3.4 trillion will be put into operation. So it presents incredible opportunities. And through my expert panel, we're going to be discussing some of the results, the surprises, and the usual suspects, of course, and unpacking what the Continental Free Trade Agreement presents in terms of opportunities. So without further ado, I'm just going to switch and introduce our panel, which should be really exciting. I'll start with my immediate left. We have Dade Mulemo Pefule, who's the head of corporate marketing at Computer Business Solutions. We have Mayor Mazi Maharaswa, who's the founder and managing director of Mazi Consult. And then we have Nemamwa Bipori, who's the head of marketing at Nedbank Lesotho. And then we have Dade Semeteraleche, who's the head of investment promotions at the Lesotho National Development Corporation and the director of domestic finance as well. So, Dade, thank you very much for joining us today. Initial reactions on the results. What are your thoughts? Usual suspects, but some interesting surprises coming out there.
Yeah, absolutely. But the one thing for me which stood out is the fact that there are lots of African brands or leading brands in Africa that a lot of us in Southern Africa weren't actively aware of. Because maybe they don't have a footprint or a presence in Southern Africa. Like talking about your Dangotes, for example, I actually only get to see some of those brands when one, tunes into CNN, for example, and during the commercial breaks, that's when you get to see some of those brands. So this is the one thing that stuck in my mind. But one issue that I need to point out, which I actually, have a little bit of a bone to grind with that kind of situation, is the fact that according to the results, some of the brands that you can see as prominent ones, as far as the results are concerned, when you see the brand on the left, on the side, adjacent to the brand, most often you will find a flag of a country that is actually off the continent. So as a result, you start thinking, when do you actually get to see something that's indigenous, that's homegrown, that is quintessentially African? So you start to see that coming along. When we actually start seeing local African brands, then we'll really have cause to celebrate Africa.
Absolutely, absolutely. Nema's initial thoughts, initial reactions?
Thank you very much. A lot of it was actually very pleasantly surprising. If you talk about the current spend with 80% being foreign brands that we consume and 20% being African brands, Lesotho more so than others, the percentage being even more smaller due to our locality and the size of our economy. I was really proud and impressed of our domestic brands, indigenous brands that have come to the fore. Not sitting in the top 4 places, but they've come to the fore. Especially so when you think about the struggle for businesses to understand the value of brand, what it means to have an identity, what it means to be consistent to that identity, what it means to have integrity with your consumers. I think that's very positive. So I'm quite thrilled. There are brands there which, for the first time, I saw a brand logo. I didn't even know that organization had a logo. So it was very informative, but more positive than dismayed. I'm optimistic. We'll move from 20% and get to 50 by 2030.
Absolutely, that's the target. That's the target. That's the target. Remember initial thoughts, initial reactions?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Kaman. And to our African audiences and also our Lesotho audiences. I think for me, so I won't talk about the financial services brands for obvious reasons. But really, I'm looking at the top brand being Vodacom. For me, what it says is that it makes you realize that being relevant makes all the difference for brands. And this is not only for local brands, but internationally. For me, yes, Vodacom is in telco, but I think the biggest thing that they are able to do is to show empathy. And I think that this is something that brands will need to adopt in this era, that you are seen to care for the communities that you serve. You're not simply there for profit. And I think Vodacom has really done that very well. So indeed, they're also probably a top brand because they've continued to invest in their brand and in their marketing. And that is something that we will discuss later, how most brands have actually decreased their marketing spend, which means that actually affects your brand equity and your ability to stand out. So really grateful for Vodacom and the work that they're doing. And I think for me, like I'm saying, what stands out is be a brand that has empathy, be relevant in your market.
Fantastic, fantastic. But Khaled, initial thoughts?
Well, thank you very much, Ndate. And perhaps let's start first with a disclaimer. I'm currently holding a position of manager, development finance within the Lesotho National Development Corporation. Yeah, starting 1st of April.
Great,
this year.
congratulations.
Thank you. Well, very exciting indeed to see how our local brands have performed And congratulations to Vodacom management, having seen how they have struggled in the past few months, bad publicity with the regulator and all that. But it also gives you confidence that the Basotho nation still believe in Vodacom as a brand. The negative publicity that we saw didn't really affect much of the perceptions. Because remember, business decisions are about perceptions, really. Brand decisions, it's also about sentiments, how consumers perceive you, how they view you. And very interesting for that matter, Africa FM having topped the list in terms of the media and communications. So we are very proud of our local brands, and it tells you if you've got the right story that speaks to the nation, to the hearts of the people, you'll really be seen and be recognized. I just wish and hope that our local companies could start to learn from these initiatives, become aware that they need to project their image, they need to be visible, they need to be there and be counted. Having a brand, having an image that speaks to your target market really goes a long way. You need to be known to be able to sell your product and services. Thank you.
Absolutely, and very often you'll find that link between brand and the bottom line often missed in organizations. And what we've been seeing over the past 10 years is that a lot of the brands and companies that are listed on the JSE actually appear on the top 100 brands.
Yeah.
So there is a direct correlation between making money and the perception, as you say. Before we quickly unpack the economic benefits, I think because of the internet connection, we are having trouble with hearing some of the other brands that appeared on the list. So I'm just going to quickly go over them, just so that the names are not lost on us. It's really, really exciting. So most admired brands in Lesotho, number one is Vodacom, followed by Nike, ShopRite, Samsung coming in at fourth, Econet coming in at fifth, Adidas coming in at sixth, and Alliance Insurance, which is a homegrown brand, coming in at seventh. Then followed by Pep Stores, KFC, and Toyota. And then the most admired African brands in Lesotho, number one, ShopRite, followed by MTN coming at number two, Aranda coming in at number three, and then Bonono Merchants coming in at number four, which is a wonderful surprise. A local homegrown brand, First National Bank coming in at number five, Boxer, South African, coming in at six, Alliance Insurance, seven, Maluti Premium Lager, which is also a homegrown brand, coming in at number eight, and then Basotholand Inc. coming in at nine, with Pick and Pay coming in at 10. So wonderful, wonderful surprises there as far as our local brands are concerned. And then admired media brands, Africa came in number one, Public Eye, Lesotho Times, PCFM, Lesotho Television, Mudise Amulemo FM, Mamelo FM, Mafiteng Community Radio, then Radio Lesotho, which is a surprise, coming in at number 9, and Ultimate FM coming in at number 10. For fear of scratching the wound on Memamwabi, we'll talk about the financial services brands in Lesotho. Number one was Standard Lesotho Bank. First National Bank came in at number 2, followed by Post Bank, which is a homegrown brand. Then Nedbank coming in at number 4, so it's not so bad. And then Metropolitan coming in at number 5. But then, very interestingly, we have homegrown financial brands. Post Bank coming in at number 1, which is number 3 in the overall list. Alliance Insurance is number 2, which was 7 in the overall list. And then Budiba, then Lady Funeral Planners, and then JP Finance, which is a micro lender, came in at number 5 as the most admired Lesotho financial services brand. We saw that from the list of most helpful brands during COVID, Matekane Group of companies came in at number 5, which was a pleasant surprise. I think we were all testament to the work and the contribution that they did during COVID. So I'm just going to circle back to the African list. There's 2 things that I really picked up, which are really big, which pertain to Ethiopian Airlines and Batu. Ethiopian Airlines, with its contribution and its lending hand in moving PPE and vaccines across Africa, So Ethiopian Airlines was very, very helpful during the pandemic. And then Batu, the shoe brand, partnering with Castle Light. Two things really popped up at me was collaborations and contribution. How can we link that and relate that to some of our local brands? Is there any input we can make? Maybe Memazi, give you a bite at this apple.
Okay. For me, I would say leveraging. I use the term broadly, but leveraging. There's clearly enough pie for every brand to grow in country. And I think we can strengthen our brands if we leverage those brands. So we, Bonono, Basotho Land Inc., amazing brands. But they struggle as small entrepreneurs to get the investment footprint that they need to get out there. But if they can leverage, with, as you said, Castle Light did that, a huge continental, global, strong entity. If it can partner with a local brand and take its story to the next level, wonderful. If you look at tourism, if we cannot each be competing for bed and beds, but try and do packages that get all of us have a taste of the pie. So when you come to Lesotho, you enjoy everybody. AfriSki should not be competing with Simonkong. You want them to come in and do both. So for me, it's leveraging. But the key is integrity, empathy. Be clear who you are, what you are, and stick to it. You know, the amount of times we don't quite understand who our client is. We don't understand who our client is in the market. So we'll open an establishment, we're selling a brand, we don't have sales within 6 months, we change. Now we're going to change from being a coffee shop to being a bar. And then it doesn't happen, then we change from being that to being an event space. If you're not true and consistent, you are not going to survive.
Absolutely. And on that, we're seeing that the brands that have captured the hearts of Africans have been in existence for 90 plus years.
Exactly.
So to your point, that I think that's a very...
And Coke is Coke. It's never going to change.
Exactly. There's another aspect that you mentioned, which I'm just going to quickly jump to, throw to Dadraleche on the investment side. Very fortunately, he's just been given a very important portfolio in the Lesotho National Development Corporation. But while you're unpacking that, what are some of the opportunities that exist through the African Continental Free Trade Agreement? I know we mentioned that first Africa took this giant step towards improving intra-African trade. Then COVID hit. And then we were sort of stuck in terms of what happens now. But we're seeing brands that pretty much mushroomed out of nowhere in South Africa, Batu, appearing on the list of top 100 brands, which means there is hope and it is possible for some of our own local brands, your Bononos and your Basotho Land Inc. What are some of the opportunities that can exist potentially for them through the agreement?
Thank you very much, Ndade Pilani. A very important question indeed. When we started the program, you played a song by Sam Komota, Hey Wena Africa. You know, it resonates with me particularly, but it tells a story of Africa collaboration, a story of Africa seeking to achieve intra-regional trade. They have, I think they were ahead of their time when they came up with that song, because it actually tells you everything about the African continental free trade area. Why am I zeroing down on that? Is because the African continental free trade agreement sort of seeks to achieve an enhanced position in terms of collaboration, in terms of trade, making sure that Lesotho is able to send its goods from Lesotho to Morocco, from Morocco to any other country. And the bottlenecks do exist, and infrastructure is one of them. You just saw how the internet connectivity just nearly killed the show today. But the opportunities are vast. And one of them, you just borrowing from the story of Batu and Castle Light, I think local brands, young companies that are there in the economy any African economy must collaborate with bigger brands to be able to ride on those shoulders of the giants. And collaboration should be the order of the day. We saw during COVID how private companies, bigger brands, even local brands, Matikani group of companies, they all came together to say, what can we do to bring back the economy back into action in a much more safer environment? But something that we learned, which was presented by COVID also, is that Africa tends to rely more on external imports more than we can rely on our own products produced in Africa. Things like sanitizers, masks, we had to import a lot of masks from China. And all of a sudden, trade between Africa and China just shot up. Why? Because we are not ready. Even South Africa even incentivized manufacturers to put money as incentives to say, look, let us try and see if we can produce our own local mask, just a mask. Now, the COVID-19 has sort of presented an opportunity to say, yes, we need to be focused locally and think globally. And I think the African Free Trade, Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement sort of presents that opportunity to integrate regional markets. It's a big market. If you are a Lesotho company, all of a sudden you can access the South African market. You saw the top brands in Africa are from Nigeria and South Africa. Now that tells you a question. That tells you something, I mean. And I think we need to be focusing on tapping into these opportunities. Infrastructure is still a major bottleneck. We need to create connectivity, make trade happen easy and in a much more faster manner, but also financial services. We have seen the innovations of M-Pesa. Now you can be able to move money, EcoCash, you can be able to move money between countries because of connectivity that is continuing to improve. I think I'll leave it at that.
Fantastic. And, as they say, collaboration is the new innovation. So collaboration, absolutely. But another thing that I noticed was a lot of the top brands operate north of Big Bridge. A lot of the top brands operate north of Big Bridge. And granted, geographically, the majority of the 1.3 billion market is north of Big Bridge. So to your point, with a Lesotho brand that only has access to 2 million, through the trade agreement is now going to have access to 1.3 billion, which is fantastic. Right? Another thing you mentioned was COVID, and I just want to circle to you, Memang, in terms of how do we think COVID has affected local and regional brands? Yes, the reset. Are we going forward? Or are we going backwards?
I think it would be amiss to start off on the positive in terms of how COVID has actually presented opportunities, because a large part of the impact of the pandemic has been that a lot of small and medium enterprises have actually gone under, primarily because they are yet building up their client bases. And a large part of it is also their need for access to financial services. So part of it has been that negatively, the COVID has actually meant that small businesses have had to close down. And I think that is quite painful, because if you think about it, a small business is something that either an individual or a family or a group of people invest in, and a lot of the time they're investing their personal finances into that business. And we've seen a lot of our local tourism operators suffering that fate. Nemazi mentioned that. And we need to look at ways as how do we help those small entities revive again? To your point, how do we help them reset? And for me, that means that we actually have to innovate solutions that we probably haven't had before. Because, for instance, speaking from a financial services perspective, some of our offerings don't necessarily meet the needs of those types of entities. So what kind of solutions, including, for instance, cash flow solutions, do we invest in to help those businesses be able to come up? But you'd also be surprised that it's not only the small entities that have suffered during the crisis. Even large brands, large companies have actually suffered dramatically. You have some of our financial services locally having declared losses for the first time. And even those that have made it through, their profitability has been largely affected. So the crisis has challenged not only small brands, but also large established brands. But on a positive note, the crisis has actually also presented an opportunity to innovate. And if you look at it, we are now being compelled in a way. A lot of brands were going digital, but now it is a necessity. It is now becoming a basic. If you're going to survive in the crisis and post the crisis, you have to go digital. And I'm happy to say that you see also even smaller brands now starting to look at how do we go online. So they have experiences to gain in being online, but they have started. But even some of the larger brands, you talk about your mobile money platforms, they are really going far ahead. And in the midst of the crisis, they've actually increased. They have grown. And so it tells you that digital and innovation are what is going to make the difference for brands going forward in terms of the reset. So I think that's just to highlight some of the impact that the crisis has had on our local brands.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Before, any thoughts on some of the opportunities that COVID has created? I know with digital platforms, it's made it easy for brands to take the product to market, because as opposed to investing in traditional brick and mortar, you pretty much just need to invest in a basic website, possibly a small online shop. What are some of the opportunities that we're seeing come up in the market?
Well, first of all, I've heard it said that if you look at the Chinese character for the word crisis, it actually is shaped like the word opportunity. So in other words, it's all a matter of mindset. Somebody can hear the word crisis being said, and they start thinking, crisis, what crisis? It's all a matter of thinking. So while I quite agree with what Amwadi has said, that, the pandemic itself has presented a lot of challenges, a lot of them much deeper for some people than others. There are people who looked at the crisis and said, what can I reap out of this? So with that, what it means is there are certain things that you look at and then you think, what can I see out of this? What can I actually create as an opportunity out of this and have the chance to grow? The fact of the matter, when you allude to technology, to digital transformation, is that it has spurred us to think on our feet and to realize that life has changed. And within the space of a year, we were able to see that unless you expedite the rate at which you change, you'll be left behind. So one thing that I realized, she having spoken about, for example, small and medium-sized companies or organization, is that some of the people realize that, look, it's either sink or swim. They started innovating, they started thinking on their feet. You started all of a sudden seeing markets erupting on the white line in the roads. Literally people selling
On the white line.
trying to survive. So you see that you need to do something very quickly. Some of the points that I'd like to allude to when it comes to opportunity, creating an opportunity out of a crisis. It's often said that in every crisis or every challenge, there is a seed of a better opportunity. So you have to have the ability to diversify or even morph. Now here, for example, most of us were used to Nokia being a leader in the late 2000s in the mobile industry. But the likelihood is that most people don't even realize that Nokia, from its origin in Finland, used to actually be a leader in the manufacture of gumboots. Would have thought.
Would have thought.
Yes, but they were able to morph and they were able to lead the mobile industry. However, they got challenged. They never actually sort of they never actually took on the changes that were in the mobile industry, and then you got kind of got a sideline, and then you had your Apple, you had your Samsung come up. So in other words, you've got to have your finger on the pulse all the time. Now, when it comes to local companies, you had companies like Medgrow, for example. There's an industry that came up, the cannabis industry, straight after the cultivation of cannabis got legalized. People leveraged on that. They took opportunity.
Yeah.
Medgrow. We just heard a few months ago or a few weeks ago that they are going global. They have a global opportunity. Now, imagine what sort of product came out of cannabis. And then all of a sudden, they started manufacturing sanitizers. That is leveraging on what is actually happening right now. There's a whole lot of other ideas that you can put through, but I'd like to give other people examples.
Absolutely. And on that, I think what we saw from the list is a change of consumer behavior. For the first time in 10 years, we've seen MTN drop in places, and you would have thought, well, it's COVID, everyone's going digital, everyone's working from home, so we're probably purchasing more airtime. But what are we seeing, Memazi, in terms of consumer trends? What are our initial thoughts in terms of, based on the list?
Based on the list.
Based on the list, and I guess based on what we're seeing in the market as well, because as I'm saying, in my own little corner, I'd sit there and think, well, people are buying a lot of MTN airtime, they're buying a lot of Vodacom airtime, and as a consequence, probably the interaction with the brand increases.
Honestly, I mean, we talk about COVID opportunities and challenges, but I think what COVID did is that it expedited the future. It brought the future to us here now, and it did it quick. But the future is always being, consumers are becoming educated. They're worried about the integrity of the product. They want things to become closer. We're tired of large footprints. We want unique, special, authentic experiences. And that's consistent throughout the spend. So people would rather, somebody would say, why would Batu do trainers? There's Nike, there's Adidas. Why, I want to do something that's my space. But there's opportunity in everything if you can know your client and know the market. So my view is that Africans globally want to spend in Africa on African products. It's the market that's not responding to them. We're not giving them the products timelessly. We're not giving it to them in quality. We're not giving it to them consistently. There's no point falling in love with a certain hair product and then 4 months later it's gone, belly up. So it's demanding from us to be consistent and more considerate, but the market's there. It's absolutely there. But I do want to say something about the free trade agreement. The challenge is that we have these great policy stances, but on the ground, the reality is if our economies are going to grow, it's going to grow bottom up. Our small industries need to drive it. But it's so difficult for me to sell a handbag I made in Masim to a client in Ghana. By the time I've gone through DHL customs forms, billing, it's such a struggle, even though technology makes it easy, because that guy could order it over my Instagram page and he can pay it. But the challenge of whether it's logistics or transportation, or we just really need to open it up. The appetite is there, the ability is there.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So we finally managed to get Tebe back on, but before I switch over to him, some quick tips, quick takeaways before we switch over to Tebe. I'm just going to give each of you like 30 seconds to just spit a few words of wisdom to our local brands. I think what we have from today is a baseline to start from. We have a baseline. And when, in truth, when Tangerine Co. started 10 years ago, we said, well, we want to take brands to the world. And 10 years later, we have this list. It's Lesotho's first authentically verified brand verification list. That then gives us a baseline to move forward. Quick words of wisdom, Natakalish.
Well, there are two words that comes to mind. Local brands needs to get visible, and we need collaboration, right on the shoulders of the bigger giants. Thank you.
Collaboration, great.
Collaboration.
Thank you. Remember,
Right. I'm actually going to talk about something that I've been looking at more recently, called crisis leadership. And to the Bifil's point, would you say, do you want to be a crisis leader? And indeed, in this age of COVID, you actually have to be able to own crisis and be able to reinvent yourself in the midst of that crisis. So for me, I'm saying to local brands, learn and think about how you're going to own the space of crisis leadership.
great. Memazi?
Not in words, but quickly. Anything's possible. You can have your local brand. Don't think it's going to end here. There's no reason why you're not in the top 10 competing with Nike. And then the other point is quality and integrity consistently. That's it.
Absolutely. Dr. Bifil?
Yeah, very quickly. In order to survive as a local brand, we have the ability to diversify and to move according to what's happening in industry, in the world. Embrace nature, embrace technology, focus within, think local as much as possible, and embrace disruption. You know, you're talking about online business, we're talking about disintermediation. Always affirm yourself as an African brand, because then you'll be able to lay the road out for posterity. But just to add a kicker at the end, that cherry on top, as a local brand, even if you are leveraging off the international brand, in terms of packaging, always assert yourself as a local brand. Do not adopt the baby with the bath water, even though you can you can throw one away instead of the other. When you adopt the foreign brand, make sure that you package it locally so that you don't necessarily adopt the cultural nuances and wherewithal, because you've got to be able to be proud as a Lesotho company, as an indigenous company, as an African company. It's all about Africa.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, my star panel. Thank you very much. You've been absolutely wonderful. So Providence would have it. We lost Tebe again on the connection, but I guess Botswana will catch up with him when it starts in 30 minutes. From us in the Kingdom of Lesotho, thank you very much. It is an honor to be here. Africa, our time is now. Fantastic.